I didn't know you was gonna be at the school today, Doc. I would have pulled up.
All right, are we ready? We are live streaming now. Are we ready to go ahead and get started? Anyone else in the waiting room, Miss Emmanuel? No.
Dr. Ross, will you be able to establish quorum?
That's a good question. I have 4 Go Team members in the Zoom. Is it
Okay. Let me look at I think you definitely need 5. Let me see. Hold on.
okay? Miss Emmanuel, did you hear back from anyone else?
No, but I am sending a link in the group.
Yes. You need 5.
Okay.
Hopefully everyone could join today, but I do understand people schedules.
We got it. Miss Jenkins just joined.
Boom.
So we have 5 now. All righty. We have 5, Miss Emmanuel, Mr. Curry. We can go ahead
So,
and
I would like to call the meeting of the Cleveland Avenue Go Team into session. And then, oh no, I'm going to call us. We're going to the official start time is 1:15 on today. And before we proceed, Miss Emmanuel, could you take a roll to ensure that we do have quorum officially? You're on mute, Miss Emmanuel.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
good afternoon.
I'm just navigating a bunch of tabs over here. I'll go ahead and take roll. I wanted to get up another template for our meeting minutes. And here we go. All right, so Dr. Enrique Ross.
Here.
Miss Brilliance Darden. I saw her. She just came up. Yep. Here. Perfect. Miss April Eccles. Miss Laquita Roberts. Miss Brittany White.
Here.
Dr. Rory Real. Mr. William Curry.
Present.
Miss Donna Jenkins.
Present.
And Miss Quenisha Hicks.
I'm here.
Perfect.
Okay, so do we have a quorum, Miss Emmanuel?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're gonna move forward. The only item on today's agenda is the approval of the budget based on the updated information Dr. Rawls received from his subsequent conversations. And so, do we have a motion to approve the one agenda item that we have for discussion today?
I motion to approve the one item on the agenda for today.
Hi, Donna.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. If anyone's in opposition, you can say nay. All right, would anyone like to abstain from voting on the agenda? Okay, so it's been motioned, approved. It's been motioned, second, and properly approved that we approve the agenda. Dr. Rawls, the floor is yours.
Guys, give me 1 second. I'm trying to pull the presentation up. Can you guys see my screen?
It says screen sharing started, but it hasn't come up yet. It's still loading, Doc, but it's coming.
Okay. Thank you guys for being here this afternoon as we worked and started part 1 of this meeting earlier last week. There were some questions and things I needed clarity on, which I did get. So I wanted to meet back with you guys so we could finish this part of it, so we can move and continue on with our budget discussion and complete our budget cycle for the FY26 school year. I'm just going to review some things that we already discussed. Okay. I didn't change the agenda. This is one from last time. I just made some adjustments. We talked about our meeting norms. The meeting of the GO team, only members of the team can participate in the discussion. Any members of the public present are here to quietly observe. We invite and welcome contributions from every member and listen to each other. We will follow the agenda as noticed to the public and stay on task. We will respect all ideas and assume good intentions. Kind of reviewing the same part of the process. We're in step 5 where we're looking at budget allocations. Step 5 here. Step 5, part 2, the Go team feedback meeting, which we're doing today. Same process. I'm sharing the budget, draft budget, and feedback from you guys to make a final decision about our draft budget before I meet with the cluster superintendent. Going back to our school strategic priorities and school strategies, we've talked about these, we ranked these based on the need and importance here at Cleveland. As you guys remember, this is our ranking. Working on building teacher capacity, which we ranked as 1 and 2. Implementing standards-based instruction and looking at rigorous assessments is standard.
Yep.
Ranking 3.
But at the same time, experience it all while you can.
4, standard 4 and 5, working with PBL and incorporating that learning time to address student needs. And we talked about 6, 7, and 8, partnering with health and wraparound services, provide opportunities for parents to engage in PBL, and provide opportunities for the community to engage around the work that we're doing. Those are our strategic plan and priority ranking. Went back and gave you the rationale for each one of these. We can go back in more detail if you guys need them. Just trying to set the stage for our next part. We talked about turnaround, in which we don't get any turnaround funding. I think you guys were okay. We talked about signature programming and how we were going to allocate those funds, which we talked about getting a STEM teacher and providing those resources and supplies to support STEM. And this was our non-staffing, our staffing tabs. And this goes into the feedback. So you guys had questions that we were talking about the EIP position. And I first want to say that in this process, it's a collaborative process that involves 3 different teams. 1, being me as the building principal, I will collaborate with my cluster superintendent, who is Tabitha Lawrence, as well as meet with you guys and share updates. And it's a 3-pronged process in which we all working together. I met with Ms. Lawrence this morning and she shared some of her thoughts around this work and around the budget and what we need to hear here at Cleveland to be able to function. Number 1, she wanted to make sure we focused on student outcomes. So when you're making budget decisions, make sure we're keeping the budget as close as we can to students. She said, look at the high leverage impact on student achievement. Which positions are going to have that high leverage impact on student achievement? Number 2, consider budget implications for the following years. So what she talked about in this and thinking about the budget process from the lens of the principal and the cluster soup is looking at funding for these positions. We don't know, based on this budget season and where we are, we don't know when we'll get later funding to maybe bring some of these positions back to our budget, because we don't know how the budget is going to look, as well as essential positions for student achievement. What are those essential things that we need to be able to function in a school? She provided the context to say, Rawls, you got to think about shaving all those extra things, making sure that you can function. It's like in an ideal world, you want to have everything, but if you have to think about those essential things that you would need, what are those essential positions that you would need to support? And last but not least, small class size. So small class size allows teachers to engage, provide all the support they needed for their students. So keeping the dollars close to students, thinking about what's the high impact student achievement in terms of these positions, thinking about funding for later. We don't know how long we may be without these positions before the budget grows and we can add them back. And what are those essential positions for student achievement? That was a conversation we had this morning, and it kind of led to these next couple of slides. The first, I know you guys asked about the EIP teacher position. I sent that to her, and her recommendation was no, to not dismiss that position because it supports the gaps that students have, those identified deficit areas, and it's essential to closing the gap because you're recognizing these students have these needs early on before actually going through the process and before going through the process to provide additional support. Really wanted to make sure that we kept the EIP teaching position. Also wanted to make sure we know with funding, if we will get rid of it, we don't know when we could get that back to support our students. Also, because we had to have other choices, the other two options was the counselor and social worker. When I spoke to her about those, she replied to not, those were off the table as well, as that the environment that we support, both for students and families and the whole child, would need to have both a counselor and a social worker. These are the options that we have to choose from. The SST specialist position, the media specialist, and the kindergarten teacher. Going through the rationale. First of all, if we did the SST, it would meet the budget requirements, and these are her recommendations. It would require a shift in implementation of the SST process, would require that we would shift some things around. And let me put that caveat out there. No matter what decision we make, there will be some shift in how we support in any role. In either one of these decisions, there will be some shifting in how the school supports. Because remember, the budget is really, really tight. So it's going to be some shifts in the things that take place. But that would require a shift in implementation of the SST process, would require some thinking different about the strategies, the interventions, make sure to get into the classroom, making sure that we're progress monitoring those things. That's what we would be, but we would have to develop that plan moving forward. If we went with the media specialist, we would meet the budget requirement, number one, but the part two, I wanted to share that this role would shift to a paraprofessional role. The only thing that this person can do would be check in and check out procedures. They wouldn't be able to pull books, wouldn't be able to pull groups, wouldn't be able to check and support with technology in terms of Chromebooks and things of that nature. They would only be here to check in and check out books and no after school meetings and things of that nature because an hourly paraprofessional will be in that role. Choice number three would be a kindergarten teacher. The kindergarten teacher would mean that we would only have one kindergarten teacher for the entire building. That teacher would support all of the students in that grade level, at least to leveling. But I don't know if we would increase enough students for leveling to get our second kindergarten teacher. But remember also that the kindergarten next year won't have paraprofessionals to support all the time. What we would be able to do is maybe pull in an hourly paraprofessional that could support maybe during reading and math time. Those are our three options to select from based on recommendations and thoughts from Ms. Lawrence, as well as me and her having dialogue around it. So at this time, I'm open for questions or discussions around it.
I have a
Dr.
question.
Ross, can you,
Quick question. I think when we were talking about it last week, we were talking about keeping or having two IEP teachers. Is the recommendation still to have two, or are we good to only have one? The recommendation is still have two. Okay.
Mhm.
and so I had a question on that too. Can you go back to what she was saying what was her rationale for not getting rid of a second EIP? I just wanted to see that.
I'm sorry if I can go back.
And so one EIP teacher would not be sufficient to support all the students who are currently in the EIP program? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, one
And
would not.
that's my question, because as we know, I feel like the EIP model that Cleveland Avenue has right now does not support this rationale. And I think that was the conversation that we were having last week. Like, if the model that we have right now with 2 teachers supported this, I think I could understand this rationale. But as of right now, our 2 EIP teachers that we have do not service all of the students. Are we looking at getting another model for next year when we have 2 EIP teachers?
So, Miss Emmanuel, that
Yes,
is
sir.
guided. I'm sorry, that is guided with the department. I called the EIP department out last year to walk me through how to secure the best funding and support most of the students. And based on our class size and based on where we were, the recommendation was to do the 1st through 3rd, because we had the students to support reading, and the 4th and 5th to support math. What we would be looking at even in next year would having to maybe add additional segments to support those additional classes. But as of right now, it was a recommendation, not just from Dr. Rawls, but from the EIP department to split, where you had that reading in the lower and you had it the 4th and 5th math in the higher. I guess my concern would be, if you had one, how would that person support the 2 different content areas in both? What if there's a need in 1st through 3rd reading and a 4th and 5th reading, with one person doing reading and math to support all of those students? At least having, one content person, and it will be driven by those rubrics, but to have one person supporting in that content area of reading and one person supporting in that content area of math. Because as we do know, the population that we serve, there are deficits, and when we get ready to do those rubrics and things again, it may be that it's more students. And to your point, though, looking at the modeling of it and looking at what we're servicing will require us to look at, the students that we have and how we support them, and even the personnel that's supporting, because we're still losing funding. And her rationale, if you take this away and students begin to grow, you get more students. You don't know, it could be 2 to 3 years before we even get additional funding to bring an additional EIP teacher back to support. Great
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. I know, like I hear 1st through 3rd, but I know EIP reading only pulls 2nd through 3rd right now, 2nd and 3rd. They're not pulling 1st. But I think, like you said, if we look next year and make sure that we're following that, I think we can reach all the kids. Because I think even last year, our EIP reading teacher pulled K through 5. But yeah, I think it just depends.
Yeah, and we do make some shifts towards the second part of the year as well. We did make that shift when we did G Mastery and things of that nature. We shifted things around, but it had to be a balance of teachers understanding we're in the second semester and we're trying to be in that home stretch of touching every kid as it lead ups to GMAS, which is another point when thinking about, all of the roles and choices you guys have, thinking about that media specialist, getting that. So those things will have to change next year. Like, we're looking at being more hands-on, more people touching students. So it may look like the media specialist pulling groups and things of that nature, but it's almost like we got to have an all hands approach on everything for next year. Like, school as we're having it now and how we're functioning now will not be the same. Like, that lane of, that's not really what I did last year, or I haven't done. That's kind of how I have to change and say what's best for all of our students, because the funding is just not there. And let me put the caveat. I don't want to have to make any decision. If in my perfect world, I wish I could keep everything just like we have it. I really wish we could, but unfortunately, all schools are going through it. And we're just trying to figure out like what, when making these tough decisions, what's the best for our school and for our students. But great question, Ms. Emmanuel. Are there any other questions around?
So can we go back to the SST?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
So right now, I'm sorry, right now, as we look at the budget and these different options for, you know, what decision needs to be made by the Go team, can I be reminded of the number that we're trying to reach right now?
We were at a balanced budget, but that was with removing the SST position, and that position was $147,000. But based on our last meeting, the Go team, you guys decided to remove the ISS monitor position, which was 55,000, which left between the ISS monitor position and the other 147,000, it left like $91,000. So that's in either one of these positions is about $127,000 for the role, minus the SSC, which of course I just said was 147. The media specialist may be a little bit more, but it's around the same as a teacher salary, which is around 127.
So basically, we have the option to remove one of the three choices below.
Yes, that's all you need, just
Okay.
one of the three choices to decide. Great question, Ms. Jenkins.
Could you tell, for those of us who do not know much about an SST role, can you let us know more about what the SST specialist is responsible for? And specifically at Cleveland Elementary School, what duties does the current SST coordinator, how does she support the school currently?
Currently, the SST coordinator manages and supports all of our students that are in Tier 2 and Tier 3 in our multi-tier support plan or system. What does that mean? That means that she is working and collaborating with grade level chairs to ensure that students are getting some interventions for the student, whether for, let's do academics. They're getting some specific interventions and probes and doing some progress monitoring around them in the tiers to determine if the students need to stay in that tier, meaning Tier 2 or Tier 3 with the support and they're progressing well, or to determine if they need to be moved up in the actual different tiers. That's based upon capturing data from 6 to 8 weeks and having these tiered meetings with the grade level teams to decide how students are doing in academic. Behavior is very similar in terms of she tracks those behaviors. If a teacher has a concern, she would meet with the teacher and they would talk through strategies and things that could happen. Within that, a lot of times is a check-in, check-out, or a folder in which teachers are actually putting the documentation in terms of how students are behaving. They then come back and meet in a 6 to 8 week time to kind of talk through, is the student progressing? What is the data telling us before moving them to another tier? This process is a continuum along the way in which after it gets to a Tier 3, you move into a Tier 4 that moves to next steps or levels of support for that student. That's typically how things are handled here at Cleveland with our SST specialists.
Thank you for the overview, and that supports and behavior.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. So then with removing the MTSS position, who then will become, or do we have a plan yet for who would become responsible for that behavior data tracking and also like 504s and things of that nature?
It's a fluid process. I haven't hashed out any of this completely yet, but it would require collaboration with the assistant principal, grade level chairs and teachers to support. And essentially the assistant principal would take on supporting that role and all the things that the SST person was supporting with collaboration work with grade level chairs and teachers on each grade level. That's a high level, but there's more unpacking to be done to have conversations around what that truly would look like.
Awesome. Could you tell us more about, sorry. Am I going with someone else?
I follow up, but you can go.
Okay, no, go. I'm sorry, I was shifting.
And I guess my next question would be about our projected enrollment for next year. Do we think that we would still need 2 kindergarten teachers for next year? Because I know that this year we could have survived with 1 kinder teacher.
It's the thing about kindergarten, you really don't know because even though it's projected, they enroll after or later. So you don't really truly know what you're going to get. We were projected, I think 32 students. But like this year, I think we projected way more than what we ended up with. We ended up with like 25 students. So it's hard to say with, they do give me a projection, but you really don't know till the school year starts because their registration is, they're like some of the last ones to register. So I don't really, like, they give me something, but I don't really know until the school year starts of how many we truly are going to have. And the only thing that, as brought up in the discussion, if you don't get enough students, teacher will hit my salary for 127,000 and some change. So if you don't get up to that amount, you still won't be able to bring a full-time teacher in. And on average, a new student is bringing in about $5,000 per new student. So you're looking at having to see a large number of new students coming in. So we could get another teacher. The only other thing is maybe you can get another paraprofessional, but then you still have to make sure you had enough to get a full-time paraprofessional. You just don't know. Historically, I've gained 3 students and I stayed even. So I have not gained like another 15, 20 students historically, but it could happen. But that is the only thing about having 1 kindergarten class.
So then traditionally, I know you said for the current school year, our actual enrollment of kindergarten is lesser than our projected numbers. How has that trend been across the years in the past with what we project and what we actually end up with?
Kindergarten is the only one that's just, you can't really track it because it goes differently. I've seen it, 2 years ago, we did have enough, but it didn't come to really after leveling. So we got more students because the leveling comes after the first 10, 15 days of school. So I will get more at that point. But I've never gotten enough to gain a new teacher by the leveling timeline because our community is just so transient with students leaving one school coming to another.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And I saw a question in the chat about doing a part-time kindergarten teacher. Was that correct?
Yes, that's in the chat from Miss Emmanuel.
I would have to see how that works. I'm not saying no to it, but I would have to see how. I think you definitely could look at maybe adding it, but then trying to staff it will be my next concern because there are positions that you can have, but trying to find someone that really just wants to come and do a part-time kindergarten may have its challenges because I've had other positions like posted like that, and just trying to find someone to come in and take on that role has its own challenges. Ms. Jenkins, did you have something?
Yes, could you speak more to the media specialist? Like, what is the media specialist specifically at Cleveland responsible for?
My media specialist does supporting with, first of all, some of the extra things, a reading bowl, technology bowl, things of that nature. She was holding down a specials rotation for me, as well as taking care of supporting the technology pieces. She's also supported different grade levels with increasing amount of minutes the students are reading. She's pulled resources for students before, for teachers before to support students. So a little bit of everything for us here at Cleveland. And this is why I'm going back to originally stating that things will look different next year because there will be additional things if we decide to keep her on board that will be picked up in terms of supporting groups of students, things of that nature as well.
And I guess just as a principal, thinking about what you listed, which were the SST specialist responsibilities as well as the media specialist, if you had to remove one or the other, could teachers fill in both of those roles? Like, You know, even as the media specialist, I see that if you did that, someone would be responsible for the checking in and checking out. But could teachers assist with leading the reading bowls and, you know, increasing technology?
I definitely think they could. I would venture to say, let me say it this way. There's an opportunity, but it would be more so a figure of finding people who will be willing to do it.
Okay.
Like one thing I can say about my staff is the things they do it well, but then they
Mhm.
also let me know when it's time for me to be off, it's time
Right.
for me to be off. So that required like some Saturdays and some different things that was happening on the weekend that the media specialist was supporting. But
Mhm.
I don't know, who would initially just take that on. But I could definitely ask and see if I can get volunteers.
Thank you.
No problem. Great
Oh,
question.
I
Anyone else?
definitely don't. Okay. Don't say that came from me about anything on Saturday.
No,
No,
no. I'm
I
just
was just
asking questions.
wondering. Okay, thank you.
No, you're welcome. This is the
All
time
right.
to ask. Please ask all questions. I'm here to just answer
I'm
whatever
not
you
trying to
got.
give Saturday work at all.
No. I was just answering the question.
Oh, I understand.
Any other clarity? Any other
So
question?
so with that being said, how many students do you roughly have that are receiving or that are in the 504 process, IEP process? How many kids do you roughly have in that role or in that receive those services?
Okay, I heard IEP and I heard 504. And are you referencing the SST, or are you just saying in general for those capacities with IEPs and 504s? You see, because
Both.
it's two different. It's two different because the
It is.
SST builds us up to get there into looking
Correct.
at where we are with IEPs. So I would
Correct.
say IEPs, we're looking at a total of 30 to 35 students. That also includes my autism unit. So we include them. Maybe it fluctuates 35, maybe to 40 at the max. Because I got two regional autism units that are definitely get supported through IEPs, but then I have students throughout the grade levels as well. The number of students that are in the tiered process and supporting, and that's from tier 2 and on up, is around 56 right now. So we would need to be tracking that piece of it. And like I said, we're working through those pieces. One of the biggest things that we're going to look at next year, because I want to be a little bit more hands-on with it, is making sure that teachers are aware of those interventions that are taking place to make sure that it gets back into the classroom, and as they're focused on tier 1 instruction, whether it's reading or math, they know what those strategies are to ensure that students are using them in tier 1. That's one of the things. So I think with that 56, either way, we will have a better indication of where they are growing, or where we need to move them in the process.
Okay, because I asked that question because I'm looking at, again, trying to figure out, which one we need to keep, which ones we can do away with. And it's almost like kind of sort of like all three of these are necessary in a sense. And so it's kind of hard to decide, what really will be in the best interest when they're all in the best interest. So I was just wondering, just for clarification, as far as to if we take this out, would the school be at a deficit, and what would that deficit, how bad of a deficit would it be on the school? Because I mean, again, when it comes to the different tiers and all that kind of stuff, that's a lot of paperwork. And so to put that on teachers, as well as trying as well as the resources that come with that, if if the SST is the one who has the resources and that's not my role, and now it's given to me, how am I supposed to find these resources? Because I can't find the resources as quickly as they can. So how do I, manage all of that and still be a classroom teacher? So yeah.
But let me clarify. I'm not saying all that is going directly to the classroom teacher. I'm saying that my assistant principal will support in that. I'm not saying that they're going to have to go pull stuff and do all that. He will support in that and do a collaboration with grade level chairs on sharing information. Not all of a sudden it went from we're loosely involved to all of a sudden it's on your plate is for you to take and run with and define all of those things. No, we're not shifting one, not having it to being fully on your plate. It is more of transitioning it so a way that we still can get it done, but just having to have someone else lead the work. And Ms. Hicks, what you just said is what have kept me up since we've had this last meeting, which is knowing in a perfect world, we need all of these. I don't want to lose any one of them. I don't. Cleveland is functioning at its highest capacity when you have all the positions. But it's just being in this space of knowing that we have to find that one or that situation. And I don't even know how to describe it. I'm not saying you don't need it because we need all of them. Just the one that I guess would I don't know how to describe it, but we got to find a space to balance our budget. That's the space that I'm in. And my philosophy, Ms. Lawrence's philosophy is keep the dollars as close as you can to the students, as that we know smaller class sizes and having that direct impact on instruction is definitely important for our scholars. I'm here if you got any other questions though.
I do have a question.
Okay.
I want to make sure once we finish and make a decision as a Go team, what is the next step for you again?
After you guys decide which one of these, I'll go in and I'll put it in the budget to get it back balanced. The next part of the process is I'll meet with my cluster superintendent. We'll talk through everything, finalize everything. Then we'll have a staffing conference. After we have our staffing conference, I'll come back, present the revised budget to you guys, and then you guys vote on it as a Go team for it to be finalized by March 14th.
So the staffing conference is with your current staff at Cleveland?
The staffing conference is with my cluster superintendent, and based on what we voted on, we've saying, hey, this is the staff that I'm going to have. She looks at it, she approves it. We have everyone at the table. I have HR, I have budget, I have everyone at the table talking about this is our plan for Cleveland for next year. They ask me questions about it, they ask me about the rationale, all those things, so we can finalize our budget for the next school year.
Understood. My only thought process in this is the consistent person a lot of times is the teacher. And so I would be curious as to how teachers, like if they had to choose one of the roles, because they would know that they would have to support the role that that we kind of dismiss, if it was the SST person, the media specialist, or a kindergarten teacher. No matter which one of those roles we get rid of, a lot of that responsibility still goes to the teachers. So I was wondering if there was any point in the process where maybe, I didn't know if you surveyed the teachers before just to kind of see their thought process, or did this conversation regarding these specific roles start here?
It started with me and my cluster superintendent, and that's just been the normal part of the process. Miss Burnett, are you on? Because maybe she can answer that question. Miss Burnett.
Yes, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Miss Jenkins asked, was there a space anywhere in this process for us to talk to teachers and seeing their feedback with deciding also where would they go and making a choice with this decision, because ultimately it may require a little bit more responsibility for them, and ask where does teachers as a staff have input in this process. I explained to her from what I received, it was always, a conversation with the cluster soup, with the Go team, and with all of us working together. I don't know if we've done a survey or anything that with staff around these decisions, but I'll let you shed a little bit more light on that, Ms. Burnett.
Yeah, like at the process, in the process at the beginning, there could have been opportunities. Oftentimes we think about hindsight, the things that we probably would have been great to do. We also, as this process with principal staffing, teachers and counselors and everything that needs to happen to do great by kids, the reliance is on the principal to think through, if we're going to do trade-offs, then where does the workload land? And so at this juncture, the conversation probably with the Go team, because there are 3 teacher advocates on here to really support the thinking of, and community members and parents, where would the workload land? Who gets the bulk of, if there's that concern. We have had schools where the conversation, let me just hypothetically, there was the conversation around removing a bookkeeper in lieu of like a clerk. And there was really deep conversation on, what's the true role of a clerk? Who else would pick up the work? Because oftentimes people are coming into the office and clerk is answering the phone and the clerk is doing this. And so that led to a deeper conversation of an AP probably needs to be like picking up some of the work of a bookkeeper. And so when we think about those positions in our building, you're right. If a lot of work that by releasing something will fall solely on someone else, that conversation you all need to have some consensus and be settled. So I would say at the Go team table, that is the conversation you all need to be having, because it's reality. Is that clear?
No, for sure, for sure. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. That was a great way of kind of summarizing. So that is something that I think has value there, Ms. Jenkins, because like Ms. Burnett said, is representative of some of the staff members. But I'm here to answer whatever questions you guys have.
Can we take a preliminary pulse of the group and what are you guys thinking as far as options so far? Like, is there one that we could remove and say, hey, this is definitely not the one we want to go with, or is there a consensus of saying, hey, this is like we're all on the same page, this is where we need to go based on the responsibilities and things of that nature? Are we at that point yet from the conversation?
Or we can talk, and either there talk about some of the challenges, because for myself, I'm a former teacher and I've gone through I remember the EIP process, not necessarily SST. They may have called it something differently, or I wasn't paying as much attention, but I just know that that's a process that really takes time, and just being able to track kids and making sure they're in the right tier and moving forward, academically or behaviorally. Like, it's usually a contact person for that. But I would love to hear more from the teachers who are on the Go team. If you guys have anything to share, if not, I totally understand.
I think I'm the only teacher on the Go team. And I feel like I've spoken my piece in the last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Were you at the last meeting?
No, I was.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was more teachers. But
I do have a question though. Like, I was looking at the kindergarten teacher choice, and I see that we have the option to gain back 2 teachers if we have the enrollment. How many students are in pre-K currently?
20.
And how many students do we need to get to having that additional teacher?
24 students give you an additional teacher.
Okay,
Now,
so
the thing
right
about
now we have
pre-K,
20 in pre-K,
but
but
that's the thing
24.
about pre-K.
I'm
Pre-K
sorry.
does not mean they automatically come to us. What happens, a lot of students fight to come to us for pre-K, but then when they go to kindergarten, they go to other schools. And we have to every year explain to them, just because you're in pre-K does not mean you automatically come to us in kindergarten. And we've tried to be very intentional to tell them, you can register to come to us, but a lot of them come from pre-K and then they go to other schools. We've gotten maybe 4 or 5 each year, but we haven't gotten majority. We've shared it with them. I've even had parents come the second day. Why my child's not registered? We explained that, pre-K is not like any other grade level, in that, it's a different department, it's funded differently. You would have to come register your child. And then when you start looking at registering, they start looking at addresses and things that nature. So there's a little difference when leaving pre-K coming into kindergarten. Does
You
that make
said
sense?
you've only had 4 to 5 students transition from pre-K to K?
On a year average, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7. I know I haven't had like more than 10 from that 20 to join us for the kindergarten because they're all interested, but I think we've tried to share it doesn't roll over like your kindergarten to first grade. You have to go get that taken care of and then register your students for kindergarten.
Okay.
So are you saying that we need to make a conscious effort into doing something so that we do get all 20 of those kids?
Ms. Hicks, we've had parent meetings. We've given them notices. We've mailed notices home. And I'm open to any other feedback. I've talked to the pre-K department about some other strategies we've done. We've tried to, even at the awards day, we tell them, hey guys, before you leave, make sure you get the paperwork you need to register your baby to come to us for kindergarten. And that's at the end of the school to still try to be proactive.
And this year for kinder combined, we have 22.
Well, the latest I got was 25, 14, and 11.
Okay, so if we have the ratio of kindergarten teacher is 1 to 24. And so if we get a 25th enrolled kinder student at that point, that's when we would need 2 teachers.
It kind of works like that, but it would depend on the leveling piece of it because 24 says that yes, you have enough for a teacher, but then there's an exemption that could go all the way up to 25, 26 for that class, but you really wouldn't determine if you got a new teacher until leveling took place.
Okay.
So leveling would determine, after we get this set, leveling would determine the funding that we get in September to make sure that we could find that other teacher. And remember, the magic amount is like 128,000.
And last thing, I was hearing what you were saying about the assistant principal, like assisting, like with 504 and RTI things. And I was just wondering if you have like maybe discussed this. Have y'all sat down and talked about this model? Because like I know we have a new assistant principal that just came in like in mid-year, and things like teach things have to be learned, and he has a lot on his plate. And so like thinking on that, I think that it will fall back on the teachers, but like has he been prepped for
In his
504s? Does
previous
he have?
role, he supported this initiative already.
Okay.
So he did support the role. And great question as we're talking about that, as that this has been his first year coming in the middle of the year. Next year, we will have the summertime to prep and plan and flesh out things on a more holistic way of looking at all the things that we're implementing. So that will be something that we'll be taking in consideration as that we will begin planning. Once we get this finalized, no matter which way it is, begin planning and prepping for next year.
So then,
great question.
so then as far as like the SST and 504 meetings, creating the plans and monitoring them, that will all fall on AP.
I said that he would lead that work. I said it still will be some collaboration. I just don't have, if you guys are asking me for the full fleshed out plan right now, I don't have that because I didn't even know if that's going to be the decision or way that we go. I do know that it will require the assistant principal to be the head and lead that work, but it's going to take some collaboration with teachers in getting it done. Like, but I'm not saying, here you go, you got to plan every part of it. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that it would take some support from the teachers with doing it. I don't have the full out plan because I don't even know if that's where the team is going to land. I don't know. I just know I had to think about some preliminary thoughts and how we would implement this.
Okay.
I
So,
wanted to
oh,
go
wait,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Jenkins.
No, I was just gonna ask this the next step for us to kind of, start the voting process and.
I'm here to answer his questions as long as you guys need it, but that would be the next step. And once again, this is not a Dr. Rawls decision. This is not a Dr. Rawls decision, even from the positions that are posted here for you guys to discuss. It is
Right.
not. It's a collaborative decision. Had a conference and conversation with Ms. Lawrence. It was based on her recommendations. I want to share that. This is about the position, not about people. This is about making sure that Cleveland Avenue has those essential pieces that are needed. I know in a perfect world, we want to keep all, but we were $720,000 in the red. Some tough decisions have to be made. I don't take it lightly. I don't take anyone's position. I don't take any of that lightly. Just have to walk through this process. It's probably one of the toughest decisions any principal would have to make around things of this nature. And I've talked to colleagues, we're all in the same space. This is a tough season and time to be a principal here in APS as we walk through this journey. I just want to say that.
Thank you for that, Dr. Rawls. I think like with me as a teacher, I think it's just hard to help make this decision without like the full plan. It's like I feel like we are just given like little bits and pieces to kind of cover what it may look like, but it's just hard to visualize how things can work with either one of the trade-offs. And I think that's
Okay.
where the difficult part comes in.
So let's go. I can give you as much as I have then, Miss Emmanuel. Which one you want to know more about? I just have not fleshed out the plan totally. I'm being very honest with you. I have not. But we can go through it. I can give you as much as I can. Which one was it? SST is the one that you want
No,
to know?
you've answered my question. I've asked before and you've answered it.
Okay. I just want to give you what I can.
Do we know at all, are there any other schools around or maybe even within our clusters that are also considering abolishing the MTSS position and kind of like, has there been any collaboration or discussion of what that would look like for schools going forward?
Not as specifically about SST. We've had some discussions about other positions and trying to figure out what that looks like. I have heard of combining maybe an SST and EIP, but that would based upon the caseload to support that. I know that the one that I've had a couple conversations with other principals around is really media specialists, trying to find something trying to meet the requirements of a media specialist when the person that will be the position itself would change so drastically with having a different person in the role supporting. Does that make sense? I have had that discussion. As far as teachers are concerned, I think that that's just a conversation a lot of principals are having to remove teachers. The only thing that really here at Cleveland is that having one teacher to support a grade level has been something that I feel like could bring a set of challenges to us, because you don't have, and we've had departmentalization before, you multiple things, only one teacher supporting, and right now we would have hourly paraprofessionals, but they would rotate. And the other part is when it comes to collaborative planning and being able to plan, you only have one teacher to support with that coach as they plan the instructional strategies to support the grade level. That's pretty much all that I've had discussions around.
I kind of like the idea that Mr. Troy was speaking on about potentially maybe getting down to two, maybe picking one that's like hands off, one that we know we want to keep, and then working through those two.
Okay, would anyone like to lead that discussion? Does anyone feel strongly about maybe removing one of the options? Like, hey, this is definitely not the direction we're looking to go in, or this is, or even the other way, hey, this is one that I feel strongly about and would love to leave this one on the table.
I kind of feel I kind of feel strongly about two. I think, or maybe even not a strong feeling, but my thoughts are that we keep the MTSS position and maybe eliminating the kindergarten teacher.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that? Or anyone else feel the same way or feel different and want to express their view on it?
If I had to make a decision, I agree with considering the SST position as a remaining position only because I guess I want to know, well, not because I think we talked about that a lot. Clearly, Cleveland has a need for EIP and the SST process, and whatever the workload that's there will need to remain, whether it's done, through the AP or the teachers. But I have questions about like media specialists and kindergarten teacher. I was trying to follow the conversation with there currently being about 24 to 25 students enrolled at Cleveland. And if you remove that one position, let's say that's the same number next year, you would have one teacher with potentially 25 plus or 24 plus students and who is not designated a paraprofessional. And I know the challenge around that. But even if you were to, let's say, have 25, and that's the question that I'm kind of iffy on if you want to make that decision, I will only move forward if we had a number that guaranteed another teacher. If we reached a certain number, then we would be guaranteed another teacher to support that role, or at least to be able to say, according to our budget, we have, quote unquote, this many hourly paraprofessionals. We're willing to designate this paraprofessional to the kindergarten department. Because I can't see a kindergarten teacher with, a surplus of students and not having additional support. I do
Okay.
think the media specialist position is important as well. But I think I've been in a school before where that media specialist role came later. But it just depends on the responsibilities at Cleveland, of course.
I agree with what Ms. Jenkins, everything that Ms. Jenkins said. I have the same thoughts. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm at a PD. I'm about to go into my next class, so I will have my camera off, but everything that Ms. Jenkins said, that's my exact thoughts as well. Thinking about the workload of a kindergarten teacher with that many students and not having a designated paraprofessional is concerning. And I would like to consider keeping the SST specialist role because of all of the work and how we have so many students on the tier system.
I agree. Is that something that we could maybe have if we decided that we didn't want the kinder position, are we able to designate a para for kinder?
The way that we're using paras next year, they're going to support in multiple grade levels with reading and math because we're losing and class sizes may be big. So pairs will be spread throughout and not just designated for kindergarten. Because there are going to be needs and things that we're going to have to fill because we will have no paraprofessionals. And as of right now, my third grade group is suggested to have 61 students. I'm sorry, 30. They're suggested to have 24 per class, so that's 48 students. I'm sorry. So they're gonna, with 48 students going up in the projection, they would possibly, not possibly, they would need some support in that third grade group as well.
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Quick question.
Uh-huh.
Out of all three of these positions that we're looking at, if the enrollment is what it needs to be, the kindergarten teacher is the only one that we have the potential of getting an additional. The other ones we don't have that option for, correct?
You're saying all right. So if you're saying if we meet the projected 227 and get that back, I guess you could, but the only thing would be, I guess you could add a media specialist or an SST person to it. You could go up, but you would have to cover whatever that amount is. And I have to talk to finance to see what that amount would be. Would that have to be the full amount because it's September and the salary may be prorated? So I would have to see what that amount is. But there's a potential to add that position back. You just have to, the dollar for dollar has to be there. And if that is what we're saying as the principal, if I get, I have to, it's a dollar thing. So what would happen is if that is the case, once we got it, all the money would have to go directly to that position. And I couldn't spend any money getting supplies and things of that nature. So let's say, for example, we do get it and we get the $127,000 needed. All of that money then would have to go right to personnel to support that position.
I'm ready to help you. Sell a product on December 31st.
Does that?
Which year did you recognize the setting? No idea.
I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I was asking in terms of if the district, if we have the numbers and the district would be willing, it would give us a kindergarten teacher, maybe that would be something that we can hold off on and just hope that the numbers come in, or you know, is it, or vice versa? If the money comes in, can we do media specialists or whatever? What is the district realms around additional support if the numbers are met or exceeded?
Once you get to leveling, that's a conversation that I would have with, based on our conversation at Go Team and with my cluster soup about how I want to spend the funding around level. So that's another conversation had. And, you know, so it's one thing if we make our 227, you get 65,000, but that's still not the 100 and something. But if we don't, then we lose 5,000 per kid as well. But if we get it, we get to 65, and we just need to have over that to get to the 127. That's for a teacher, and 147 for the SST. And I don't know the exact number on media specialists, but I think it's around the same. Not too much more than the teacher. But I don't have that exact number right in front of me.
I'm sorry, Dr. Ross. I was going back to the paras because I wanted
Okay.
to kind of flush out. So our projected numbers for third grade are showing us that we're definitely going to need some para support for third grade. So are we saying that we are designating a para to third grade, or that despite the need for that para in third grade, they're still going to be pretty much floating?
No, I'm not designating. Paras will be supporting in all reading and math instruction. So that's through grade levels. I'm not designating just one to a certain grade level because we got to be able to support throughout the building. Just with the numbers, just with all the things that's going on. So they'll be supporting in multiple grade levels with those students. So I'm saying that I know that third grade numbers were a little higher. So that would mean that I know that I'll be having some support in third grade. Definitely supporting some in kinder, for wherever the numbers look to get support. But it will be supporting in reading and math small group with scholars next year.
And then typically when does leveling happen?
It's around the first 10, 15 days of school. Okay. So right around that Labor Day, a little bit after that Labor Day time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we've always pushed it here. First week of school, a lot of students think they live in Fulton County and not APS. And so there's a week that they're out and we're trying to get them all here. And, you know, I try to stress to teachers, make sure you make phone calls to everyone that's on your roster so we can get them here and they can count. So definitely those first 10, 15 days are important.
I think the point that you made is extremely important. So if we go back to the kindergarten teacher, and let's say when leveling happens, there are only 19 kids in kindergarten. And then a month later, you know, you had the transfers and now we up to 29. My question kind of, as we were talking, was going back to which one of these positions, if you had to add it later, like if we started the school year full force, all the students, you know, we have different tiers, so there's a lot of support there. You have 27 kids or 25 kids coming in door, 24 right at that number. And then you have the media specialist. Which one of these positions would we be most comfortable adding later if we came in with students, the attendance, the number of students, as well as the needs for, like I said, EIP and SST? And I'm leaning just myself closer to the media specialist because I feel like the other two positions, and it's just because I hear the role of the media specialist and I know how important a media specialist is. So let me say that. But just from the outside looking in, like being able to show up and having all the kids, you definitely need more than one teacher. And going back to the SST process, it just seems like it's a lot that the EIP teacher cannot handle. So you will have to, of course, spend the summer developing the plan so that the assistant principal as well as the teachers can lead that realistically.
So which position, and I appreciate that, Ms. Jenkins, I appreciate the lively discussion. Which position do we feel comfortable um filling at a later date? So basically we're talking which one do we feel again, as we stated, that all these positions are needed and necessary and vital to what it is we do at Cleveland Elementary. But which position do we feel comfortable postponing with the intention of, so basically which one do we need, which one is a backup, and then which one are we saying we can do without? I think that's where we are. And I think the dilemma we're having currently is SST and the kindergarten teacher because we're so close in number. But Dr. Ross, you were saying that with level funding, we're not sure, even if we have the 29, if they'll give us the money or
Yeah,
what that.
I love that you said that, Troy. I mean, sorry, Mr. Curry, the last time, because there's no guarantee that we're going. I don't want to make a promise that I can't stamp. I don't want to sign a check to say, hey, in September, we'll be able to bring position A, B, and C back. There's no guarantee of it. I would hope that we would, but I can't say to you guys that if we postpone it, that when September comes, you can automatically add this position back. I just want to make sure I clarify that. We're talking hypothetical, we're talking about what ifs. But I like the other point of, and just, providing clarity would be like almost, could we function without? With the hopes that if it does happen, and that was kind of some of the feedback Ms. Lawrence gave me was like, Rawls, you got to understand that we still don't know. Next year could be even more cuts. We just don't know. So when you're thinking about this, thinking about maybe not being able to staff that position for a couple years or based on till the budget gets back around to being better. I know it's a tough decision, but we got to put that out there as well because it may not be the case when leveling hits.
I know this question has been asked before, but like for the past 3 years, what have the numbers been like in kindergarten?
Okay, so my very first year, I think I ended up with no more than 20, 21 students in both classes. Last year we were more at 17 and maybe 20.
Okay.
This year it's been a lower numbers, 14 and 11.
Okay. Well, I'll start it off. My vote is likely for kindergarten, just based on the numbers. And then with the idea that if we get more students, I know the district will likely have a conversation, hopefully around making adjustments if needed, if we have too many students in a class. So my first choice is kindergarten. My second choice is media specialist.
Same, absolutely same.
I think I'm in the same boat. And then I know you said we'll possibly you're gonna have paras. They won't be designated or dedicated to a specific grade level. They'll be more subject oriented. But I think if the need arises, then I think their workload could be shifted as necessary. So I would say the same order. Would anyone else like to chime in for additional feedback or commentary or comments?
Okay, I have a quick question. So I know this is what's being recommended. Like, do we have to go with this plan? Like, what if we went with the original plan? Is that a possibility, or do we like this is like what it is? Like, we have to go this way.
So I send it up to the cluster superintendent. Once she gives her recommendation on not making a move, she kind of trumps that budget process for me. Like I talked to you guys, I shared with her, but once I went back and shared, she makes kind of the final step. Hence why I go back to staffing conferences. She can still make changes to these components. So when she made the comment about the EIP, yes, her voice and her decision is close to being, well, final from my side. Are that you referring to that EIP teaching position, Miss Brilliance? Is that?
Yeah, just I know it's
I
been.
got you.
I didn't
I
know.
promise you, I took it to her, and that is all the guidance. She is the one that puts that stamp of approval on things.
Okay.
Because once this decision is made, I take it back to her, and she still could look at it and say, Ross, I hear what they're saying, but when thinking about the school, based on data and based on this, it could be a different discussion had. But that wouldn't be a Dr. Ross. That's a cluster soup decision.
Do most other schools also, Dr. Rawls, when they have students or this amount of students in the EIP program, have 2 EIP personnel for reading and math?
They do. The thing that's unique about Cleveland is while we do have a rather high amount of students being serviced in EIP, we had a long discussion last year around the funding and how to effectively use the funding and make sure that we are supporting those. And so what happens, there's a high need, but then you have to look at what gives you the biggest bang for your buck. I'm not saying that there are not students in 4th and 5th grade that have challenges in reading. But when we look at securing funding and supporting all of our students, it was recommended to do 1st through 3rd because it allowed us to get more funding to support those students. And when you have more students, like we're at 227 for next year. It's just obviously when you have more students, you get more funding, which gives you more opportunities to have more EIP teachers. So it is that whole more students, more funding, more teachers. And we're just in that space where we're trying to leverage as much as we can for that. I got my teachers pulling additional segments that don't even count towards the EIP part because there are needs for additional students to be supported.
Thank you.
No problem.
So do you guys want to take a preliminary vote and see where we are, or
Yes,
you want to have
sir.
a question, or what you guys are probably feeling?
I think we're ready to vote, hopefully. A preliminary vote.
Okay. Also, no, it's not even vote. Somebody has to make a recommendation on what order. So I think we're all kind of in agreement. There wasn't any opposition to your line of thinking, Ms. Jenkins. So now I think it's a matter of, or your ranking. So now I think it's a matter of voting on our. So for point of clarity, can we vote in tiers and say, hey, this is our choice number one, choice number two, and then you take it back to them and kind of see what they say? Well, this is what the board said, this is what their choice, and then it's based on, we'll have basically a plan A and a plan B.
I mean, that is fine. We're cutting it close, but I have to meet back with you guys. So all this has to kind of like, I needed to know what you're stamping to
Yes.
take back to her.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying no.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Dr. Ross.
No, I'm not saying no. I'm saying if you guys are saying ranking the three and you want to do it that way, I still have to take it back to the cluster soup, then come back so y'all can vote on it before I can move on. And actually, the budget closes today. They left it open for me to have this meeting with you guys. Miss Burnett.
So, Dr. Ross, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I think what I heard was the way they, and correct me if I'm wrong, go team, the way they're asking is their first choice will be what they really want you to go with. And then if the first choice is a no from the cluster superintendent or within the budget, then the second option, and then you work from that. Is that what I'm hearing you all?
Yes, ma'am. No, that's exactly what you're hearing. We know that it's time, Dr. Rawls, and you have to move forward. And so I know we have to vote on one, but again, instead of you having to bring it back to us, we're telling you what our thoughts are now. We know you and the superintendent are gonna make the ultimate decision. We just want you to know what our thought process is and where we stand based on the decisions we have. Well, the options we have.
Totally agree. I'm sorry, I misinterpreted. Totally agree. That is fine. So then I'll know what you want me to go with first, second, and third. That's fine.
Yes, and then again, we understand that you guys are going to do what you need to do, but we just want you to know how we feel and what our opinions are on why we have this opportunity.
But if these were her suggestions from the start, then why would we even need a second? You know what I'm saying? Why would we need a second pick if these were all her suggestions from the start? So it's like whatever we choose should kind of be in alignment anyways, because these were the things that she suggested. If that makes any sense.
It does. We just wanted to make sure we covered as much ground as possible while we were here. So if there is any gray area, we're hopefully covering that too. But we can the other option is just pick one. So we definitely picking one. The other option is to say, hey, this is our first and second choice, just so we have a second choice out there.
Okay.
But I do think again that they say pick one of these three. We picked one. Everybody should be in agreement with it.
Right.
Would someone like to make a motion either way, picking a first choice or a first and second choice for us to vote on?
We're making a suggestion for keep the position we want to keep or the position we want to abolish.
I think we're making a suggestion for the position we want to keep.
Right.
And then it's understood whichever one we don't. I mean, either way he's put it. Whichever one we keep, that means we're abolishing the others, and whichever ones we abolish, we're keeping the one we. But I think
we get to keep two. Huh?
For sake of,
do we get to keep two? Okay.
Right.
So do we have a motion on the floor to suggest a position keep?
Yes. I, Donna Jenkins, make a motion that we keep the SST specialist position as well as the media specialist position.
I, Brittany White, second the motion.
Okay. And just for clarity, is that choice one and then choice two, or you're saying keep both of them?
We're keeping choice one and choice two.
Yes.
Okay. So it's been moved and properly.
I'm sorry to interrupt on a discussion. So, Dr. Rawls, is it the understanding that keeping 1 and 2, you have that amount of money in your budget? Or is the understanding is that by keeping 1 and 2, if the cluster superintendent and staffing conference says we can't make 1 work, then you move to 2. I just want to make sure that your motions are clear as to what Dr. Rawls should move forward with.
Yes, no, thank you for that.
But for clarity, that's not what was just motion, correct? I want to make sure I interpret that correctly.
So I think that was the first question then. Are we able to keep 2 of the positions or we're keeping 1? Does the budget, I thought the budget was in support of 2 out of 3 of these positions.
To answer that question, yes. The budget is saying we need to choose 1 position. The other 2 will be kept. The budget does support 2 positions. It's just 1 that needs to be selected.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded that we keep the SST position and the media specialist position. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Aye. Miss Emanuel's aye was in the chat.
Yes, because she said she's off. Okay, and if there's anyone who's in opposition of this proposed motion, please signal by saying nay. And then would anyone like to abstain from voting on this matter? Okay, and so there you have it, Dr. Rawls. We would like to move forward as keeping the SST position and the media specialist position.
So now that you have that motion, now you need to entertain a motion to approve, to vote on, take action on the budget with the already said motion in place.
Ms. Burnett, I just have clarity for them to make sure I'm understanding correctly on this vote. Based on what they voted on, kindergarten would be the position that's abolished, correct?
Correct.
When I meet with my cluster superintendent, if she says kindergarten is off the table, I would go with the next choice. Is that correct? And if I heard it correctly in the ranking, that would be media specialist, then SST. Is that correct?
I'm making sure that the group understands that.
But
yeah,
the question that I asked, if these were already suggested by her, then why would kindergarten be not on the table? How did kindergarten get on the table? Because we never talked about a kindergarten.
I mean, that's still, like I said, it's all of that. She makes that call, but I put it based on a recommendation. It would just go back to her and look at it and just see. You see, I hear what you're saying, Ms. White, but I just put these.
Recommended by her then?
I'm sorry.
So was the kindergarten, the choice of the kindergarten teacher was not already recommended by her?
All 3 of these were options, trade-offs that were to be brought back to the Go team. Yes.
By Ms. Lawrence?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I do understand, and I don't like interfering with meetings, but I do hear what you say. What you're saying is that if these were the 3 were her suggestions, and she should be okay with the 2 choices, the 2 that you made. So I do understand.
Right.
That is correct.
And to clarify, Ms. White, I'm not saying she won't. I'm just asking if we have to go down that road that I am aware of what the next steps are. That's all that I'm asking.
Yeah, it's just creating a little bit of confusion because the same as Ms. Darden said that our initial discussions were around the EIP teacher and things of that nature. We never discussed the kindergarten teacher. So it's like now the kindergarten teacher is being placed on the table for us to make a vote or for us to choose upon. And then you come back and you say, well, you can't choose that one. But we never thought about that one to begin with.
So I think, Ms. White, the process involves all 3 groups and parties. This is one conversation I'm having with you guys before even being able to take the feedback back to her, just as I have in the initial conversation around the allocation and when we had that discussion. Just all parties in it having a chance to look at it and have discussions. and then moving through the process. Like I've always said, nothing is final until we vote on the 14th. It's still a fluid process. I'm just trying to make sure that I honor all the parts of it with getting feedback from you guys. Even with this, it's still not final till you guys come back and vote on the final budget that happens on March 14th.
And so,
Okay.
Dr. Raw, just to kind of piggyback, just to be sure from your last meeting, the ERP position was taken completely off the table by the super. Like,
So,
no.
yes, it was
Okay.
so it is a position that could be a flex position to be used, but it was taken off based on the criteria of making sure we had enough personnel to support. Also based around if we don't get funding for the next couple of years to support any position that's removed, then you don't have the personnel to support those early intervention students until the budget allocates for them.
Okay. So then I think the way that the ranking goes was correct then. If at a later discussion, the kindergarten teacher comes off the table, then we move with the removal or the abolition of the media specialist and then the SST.
Got it. I just want to make sure I had it correct.
Okay, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that Miss Lawrence can attend our meeting? I know we said we're gonna have another one. Is there any way she can attend to give her feedback to us directly, so maybe we could understand better?
Miss Burnett, I'm sorry. Yeah, Miss Burnett, can you help me on that one?
Well, so the process right now is, yes, definitely. She could attend the final or the final approval and just be able to provide rationale. One of the things that we always want to keep in mind is, yes, Dr. Rawls is definitely responsible for Cleveland Avenue, and then it moves up the chain, and y'all understand that. Plus, the superintendent is accountable for Cleveland as well. So if you all would like for her to attend, I would definitely ask and reach out to her to see if it would be available on the time you have your last meeting.
And that'll be before we make a final decision, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I don't think that's such a horrible idea, especially since, we already had an original plan and now, it's being presented like, well, this is what we got to do now. I mean, at least to just get some clarity from, her directly, like that might be helpful to know what, not saying anything, but just to, know concrete, like this is what we can and can't do.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think it's your time to call for the vote for the budget, the draft budget.
So, okay, so we voted on that topic, and then so now everybody understands what we voted on. So we're removing the kindergarten teacher, and keeping the media specialist and the SST specialist. And if the kindergarten teacher is not an option for whatever reason, we would then remove the media specialist, but keep the SST specialist. So we've already agreed on that. Now we're voting on approving the draft budget as a whole. So do we have a motion to approve the draft budget as a whole?
Okay, I have a quick question on that. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure this is not the final decision. Like, we're going to speak to Miss Lawrence and then come up with a final game plan? Or this is the decision?
No, we're voting on the draft budget. I just want to make sure we're voting on a draft budget. We had a deadline of yesterday. They extended it so we could have this meeting, but we have to vote with the information we have. we have to move forward and vote on a draft budget. He will still come back with a final budget that we then have to vote on, but we have to move forward today with a plan for moving forward. And I think we've been strategic about checking every box. That's why I even made the suggestion of not just one suggestion, but what is our tiered plan, so he knows our thoughts and processes moving forward. But based on the information that I'm getting from this, we have to make a decision today to stay on track with the timelines set aside for this process. But again, this is the draft budget.
Not the
Then
final.
like a month or so where they will come back with the final budget that again we as a goal team get to vote on.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
I just want to make sure I'm not speaking of it.
No,
That's
you're
where we are. Again, this is the draft budget, and so now we're asking for a motion to approve the draft budget in totality. With we've already agreed on the tiered system, and we have to make a decision. So we've already agreed on which positions we will cut and why, and the order of that. But now we have to approve the total budget again, the draft total budget again.
Understood.
So do we have a motion to? No.
Miss Emmanuel made the motion in the chat.
Okay, so Ms. Emmanuel has made a motion in the chat to approve the draft budget. Do we have a second?
Donna Jenkins, that motion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve the draft budget as presented. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Okay. All right. Is there anyone who's in opposition of approving the draft budget, please signal by saying nay. And then is there anyone who would like to abstain from voting on the draft budget? Okay, so it's been moved, seconded, and properly approved that we move forward with the draft budget as presented. And then that was the only budget item. But that was the only agenda item. Our next meeting is scheduled for when? Just for reference while we're on the call together.
I don't have it right in front of me.
Miss Emmanuel might be able to tell us this in the chat. We didn't change that one, did we? I got on my calendar if it's still the same one we originally had planned.
I think we had to change it because we had to have it before March 14th, which is the day to finalize the budget.
I got you. So I think we did change it at the last meeting. We changed it to, I don't know. I still got the 26th on my calendar, but I know we changed it because we had to have it before the 14th. No, we have it on the, I don't know. We have it on the 26th. My calendar says the 26th now, February 26th.
We had to change that because that's the day of my staffing conference meeting, the 26th.
Miss Emmanuel put one moment in the chat. I think she's going to get the date for us.
She said March 12th at 4:00.
So it was the 12th. But you said that you have another meeting that day, Dr. Ross?
I thought you said February 26th, which was the original date, but that's my staffing conference. So we will meet on March 12th at 4. But it has to be done by the 14th. So yes, that meets the timeline.
All right, you said, and I'm trying to just put on my calendar, March 12th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Emmanuel said she would send a calendar invite as well.
I got you. All right, and I just want to, again, I know that's not pertaining, it's for informational purposes. But I thank you all for your time and attention. I know many of us are off today. But if there are no new items or any other items that we want to cover at this meeting, I would like to call for an adjournment or get a motion to call for an adjournment.
Our motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Okay. Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn today's meeting. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Does anyone oppose adjourning today's meeting? All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn today's meeting. The time is officially 2:48. Again, I thank you all for your time and attention.
Have a great day.
All right, you guys have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your holiday if you're off today. You love them.